Call the budget meeting to order. Let's see, do we have any citizens communications? No citizens communications. Do we need to do these transfers first, Diane, or these?
That'd be awesome.
Okay.
I thought we were doing transfers till tomorrow. I don't have any transfers.
Okay, you'll do
Okay,
tomorrow.
we do them tomorrow.
Thank you, sorry. I didn't have them. Okay, sorry, I didn't have them in my
You want me to
copy.
give them back to you?
Please, thank you.
You will see those again tomorrow. Actually, I think I've got one more that came in today. That's why I was waiting.
Okay.
No worries.
So I guess we're gonna work on the sheriff's budget and traffic control, jail corrections, and workhouse and drug control. Sheriff, did you want to speak any before we start going over it?
Just ready to go through this line by line, or however you would like to do it. I think that's kind of what we did last year, and talk about anything that y'all want to talk about, questions that you have. Talk to you a little bit about what we did in the law enforcement committee as it relates to the salaries in particular. So if that pleases y'all, then that's the way we'll proceed. I have several members of the staff with me tonight, and they will be asked to speak on various line items as it relates to their expertise.
Okay, I'm gonna let you go first.
Ready?
Start presenting.
Okay, so the first thing, as y'all are aware, is the salary study that we've been working on with Steve Thompson and his associates, along with Claire and Phoebe. And what you'll see in this budget is the final number that we came up with, given the budget number that we were allowed to work within. So we had a total lump sum of money that we wanted to try to maximize or right-size our agency, if you will, our organization, from the standpoint of starting pay and tenure. And as you know, 4% raise was baked into that, as it was for all county employees. And so I felt like it was important that if we're gonna remain competitive in the county, that first thing we had to do was focus on the starting pay. Because if you just take care of the tenure, then you get left behind on the starting side if you're not gonna be competitive with bringing in new recruits. So we raised that to what we felt like was a competitive starting rate, and then you have to take that off of the pot of money that we were budgeted to work within. And then based on that new starting pay, you have to raise those people that are in your organization up to the minimum starting amount. And then you subtract that off of the total number that you have to work with. You take the total cost of the 4% budget, and you take that off of the number that you have to work with, and then whatever was left, we tried to take care of some tenure issues. Bottom line, when you look at it from an organizational perspective, a large number of our staff were only going to see a 4% raise. In other words, they were already making above the minimums that we proposed to increase to, and from a tenure well, I'll just put it this way, from a minimum standard number, 93 people were touched in the organization, and on the tenure side, 164. That's out of a staff of 350. So you can see a lot of the folks were just ending up with a resultant of a 4% raise, which I don't think is what we were hoping to accomplish. It is a great start to increase that starting pay, but I think we all had something different in mind. The law enforcement committee asked me to go back to the drawing board. This was based on the 65th percentile, which is the numbers that were presented to y'all at a meeting that was previous to now. And they asked me to go back and see what the cost would be. This would be to the sheriff's employees only, not the civilians, for the 75th percentile, the 85th percentile, and the 95th percentile. So they wanted a cost for what that would look like for each of those percentiles. And we went back and had a conversation with Steve Thompson last week, myself, Claire, and Phoebe, and we gave him the directions that we wanted and asked him to come back with what that cost would be. We don't have that number today. He said he may have us something by the end of the week, but what we're proposing to you today is the budget as you see before you, resulted on what we started out with. So if we come back to you at a later time, that would be in the form of some amendment, assuming that that's what the way y'all wanted to proceed. Is that clear as mud?
I think that's the goal, is that we want to get you to a place where you're not having difficulty recruiting and retaining the top public safety, law enforcement employees
Right.
for the county, correct?
Absolutely, yeah.
And I think I agree with the law enforcement, public safety committee. I mean, I would like to know what that looks like. So even if we can't get it immediately, how do we start to get there over time?
Right.
So I agree with that direction. I know this was a lot of work that's put into this study. We might as well make the most out of it and create some sort of roadmap to get us to where we need to be on the law enforcement side. That's my feeling.
Right. Totally agree. And, you know, I think, you know, the exercise that we went through was a great exercise. And again, I think I put it to the law enforcement committee, we squeezed all the juice we could out of that lemon, given the budget that we had to work within. And it's definitely a good start, but I think it leaves a little to be desired, because when the resultant is that about half of your staff is going to end up with a 4% raise, that's not going to be well received, put it that way, in comparison to maybe what they were expecting when you're talking about doing a salary comparative study that would get us competitive with the people that we're truly competing against, the Franklins, the Brentwoods, the Highway Patrols, the Metro Nashvilles, and those kind of folks. So we'll see what those numbers look like. We'll get that information back.
One more question is, so when you look at the Brentwood, the folks that we're competing with to staff your office, staff the jail, what percentile are they in? Do we know?
I've been told the 90th or 95th percentile, I think, is what Brentwood is in. Is that right, Claire?
They're around 75th, 85th. And that's Franklin and Brentwood.
So is it from a starting pay standpoint, from where we would fall out now with our proposal that you're looking at, would be third behind Murfreesboro and Brentwood. But that's before they do anything in July. So I don't know where we'll fall out with those we're comparing against after they do whatever they're gonna do. Been told Brentwood's getting a 5%, Highway Patrol's getting a market adjustment. I don't know about the rest of the jurisdictions, but we could be right back in the boat we're in before we even get to this point, depending on what they do. So that's where we stand today. Any further questions or discussions on that? Okay, so we'll report back to you at the appropriate time once we have that information. Going down the list here, you'll see a lot of these just have the reflect an increase based on the number of personnel that were added. We'll stop on any of that y'all want to, but you'll see the salary supplements. The overtime pay obviously has to adjust up. When salaries go up, the overtime budget has to go up. Because time and a half on more money is more money. So we recognize that, and we've worked with Phoebe to come up with what that number will be. And that number's been provided by her there to reflect that.
Sheriff, I have a question on that. Since you have filled so many positions, I would think our overtime would go down, since you shouldn't have to have as much overtime.
That would be the
Why
hope.
is that not?
Yeah, that would be the hope. Unfortunately, what that doesn't take into account is special events, like all of the school extra events, the Renaissance Fair, which is coming up, the rodeo, which is coming up, the fair, which will be here in the summer. All of those things are on top. They're additional. Those are not overtime costs per se in terms of people working more than their allotted scheduled time. So those numbers are always gonna be there, so you're not gonna see those go down. And we're usually coming out in the red on that because what we're given, for example, by Gordon Hampton and his folks for the Renaissance Fair is not enough to cover what we pay in overtime to work that event. And the same with schools. Depending on who works those school events, $50 an hour, for example, does not cover the cost of somebody that is making more than that at time and a half. So, we can't pick and choose like, hey, only folks that make below that amount are eligible to work those events. So if it's time and a half for them, then obviously it's gonna put us in the red. So we're always gonna be chasing that rabbit, if you will. We're looking at ways to reduce our overtime, and that's gonna come in terms of a different work schedule, number one. And I'm working with Phoebe and Claire on stipends in lieu of overtime for things like FTO, which is field training officers. So rather than paying them overtime when they have a trainee, we're looking at paying them a stipend, which will be a set amount that we can budget for, that we will know based on the defined number of FTOs we have and the number of hours in a year. We can put a budget number on that without having to be a moving target of paying someone overtime. So looking at stipends in terms of in lieu of overtime. So we're looking at ways to cut our overtime budget. But those have not been realized yet. Those are not in place yet. And those are things that we're moving towards.
I have another question. I know a lot of the deputies do a lot of freelance using the patrol cars and things. Are you up in the charge on those?
Having conversations with Lisa Carson, county attorney, about looking at bringing that back in-house. We currently contract with a vendor, an outside vendor, that sets all of those extra duty assignments up for us. And so they are the ones that regulate that. What we would like to do is bring that back in-house, make sure that the county is recouping their fair share for the cost of the uniform and the car, and that the deputies are being adequately compensated for the time that they're having to put in on those jobs. So that's another initiative that we're looking at going into this new fiscal year.
Okay, I just hope you'll increase those charges. I talked to Dusty Rhodes back a couple of years ago about those need to be increased. We should be going in the hole on private
Absolutely.
things.
We definitely, if they want it, they need to pay for it, they need to fund it. We need to make sure that the deputies, it's worth their time off to be working those, because as we know, every church wants their own traffic deputy or security deputy, and it's just becoming a growing demand. And it's a strain on our department because the demand is so high, but the resources are so few because people value their time off. So, yeah, we want to make it worth their while, and we want to make it worth the county's while.
Another thing about the overtime, I know there's a lot of overtime over at the court. And I've talked to some of the deputies, and they would love to cut out some of that overtime. They want to go home and see their families and go to ball games.
Absolutely.
Have you talked to the judges any about making sure their schedules?
I think Chief Moore could probably address that better than me. That's probably an ongoing thing, and Chief, you'll have to come to the podium here. But yeah, we're kind of at the mercy of the judges when they decide to, go long, decide they want to finish something opposed to carrying it over to the next day. And I think that's something that Cleve Johnson and Freddie have both probably worked with our judges consistently on. Freddie, you want to talk on that?
Well, we would like to do that, Commissioner, but the problem is, they have to get along too.
I know exactly what the problem is.
At the end of the day, we don't control that. It's just that simple. Yeah, we like to go home, but at the end of the day, they said it.
I know.
And we've had conversations with them, but
it doesn't work out.
Yeah, and you can't change their schedule. So we do what we have to do. Unfortunately, I wish I had a good answer for you, but I think you know the answer to that.
I know the answer. I was just hoping that maybe they could work out something where the deputies could go home some on Friday nights and things like that.
It would be
Have
great,
events.
but we don't
But it's
control
still a problem.
It's not as bad as it was. We're getting a lot better. It's getting a lot better. It's not near as bad as it was, so I can't say that. It is getting better.
All right.
We're getting there.
Freddie, you want to talk a little bit about how we're going to start to use the reserve program to supplement the court services, court security, and they're a volunteer, so that in and of itself will cut down on overtime.
Yeah, that's helping us out a lot. Captain Cortez is dealing with the reserves, and so they're coming in and helping us out a lot where we're short and having people out and we're running, from one place to the other, but the reserves have really helped us out a lot. And so that's building up the morale, and it's doing a lot for us.
Good, good.
It's good.
So it's just another example of the initiatives we're trying to implement to reduce the overtime budget. And like I said, it feels like we're kind of chasing the rabbit all the time when it comes to that, but we're doing everything we can to try to manage that, and a lot of that goes to our supervisors. Our supervisors have really got to kind of keep their thumb on the pulse when it comes to making sure that these folks, there's truly a need for them to be working overtime when they're doing that. We don't want people ever getting into the practice of riding the clock, if you will. That's not something that we would advocate or promote within the sheriff's office. So that falls back on the supervisors.
I have a question, Sheriff. So did you say that, like, when you provide security for the Renaissance or for the schools, that they're paying you back, they're paying the sheriff's department back some money, but not all the money?
Correct.
Is that just I'm asking everybody,
Well,
is that just a
I
practice
guess,
that's always been?
I'm not sure, maybe somebody may want to speak to that other than me, but I mean, let's face it, taxpayers are the ones paying for it.
Sure.
Now, whose budget it comes out of, does it matter in the grand scheme of things? I don't know. But when it comes to, balancing our budget and watching our line items, then, it does matter, because I need to be able to have answers to those questions. But, in the grand scheme of things, it's all kind of coming out of the same bucket, if you will. But somebody else may have a better answer than me on that.
So the first year we did the Renaissance Festival, we had the overtime in the Parks and Rec department. And after it was, we moved all of those dollars that were spent, and we had to do journal entries moving that payroll out of the sheriff's budget into Parks and Rec. As you can imagine, that became tedious, trying to separate those dollars. So what we did the next year, and included in this budget, is we removed $70,000, removed it from the Parks and Rec budget, reducing their overall budget, and increased the sheriff's budget by $70,000. That's why you can see on that page 1, you'll see where actually there's 2 line items, one for overtime, number 518700, and one for 518701. And that $70,000 is exactly that. It was the $70,000 that we pulled from Parks and Rec budget, put it in here. So then we try to keep those two separate within the sheriff's budget. As you can see, that very first column, which is LY actual, that's last year's actual, you'll see there's $0 there. We realized at the end of the year, we had not broken those out. Again, it becomes very tedious trying to figure out what dollars went for what event. So the dollars were just paid out of regular overtime. So that's why you see this year, we have combined those two numbers to increase his overtime up to the $986,000. So that is included from the 70. Now, is 70 still enough? Probably not. That was 2 years ago. But that was the decision, was to move everything in the sheriff, so that we made, when we paid those deputies, we did not have to try to separate and cost it to 5 different locations.
I guess even more importantly to me, the schools. So are You paying department like just regular department overtime for the deputies to work, or the school's paying them as off-duty jobs?
We do receive revenue from the from the school department, so we do offset that. That was a set amount that was agreed upon to charge the schools. Again, that was an agreement that we put into motion and did a memorandum of understanding between the two, and they were to pay a flat amount. Again, it may be something that we may need to look at to see why, but that money does come back into the general fund.
Do you know how much, is it just an hourly rate? I mean,
It's a
$50
flat
an hour?
$50 an hour,
$50 an hour.
4-hour minimum.
And so that's being paid by the schools to
To
the,
us.
to
the county.
the county, and then the county's paying it back out to.
Well, yes, it's to offset the expense. The revenue's coming in, the school is cutting us a check, and we're depositing into the general fund.
And is that because you guys have a outside vendor that's doing that? Because to me, that seems like that would be, if they're doing it on their own time off duty, that's one thing, but if it's being paid back through the county, then they're entitled to overtime pay. So either they're entitled to maybe less than the 50 an hour, which I don't want to do to the deputies, but it could be more than that. That may actually even be violating some FLSA issues.
So they do receive overtime. That's why we're paying it out of the sheriff's department. That does not go through the third-party vendor. That is paid strictly out of our payroll department, and it is just hours worked. So if they go over hours of work, that is paid at
Okay.
part-time, or
So-
I'm sorry, at time and a half.
So it maybe it comes out in the wash. Some people don't make 50 an hour overtime,
Correct.
and then some people make more, but to the county, maybe it balances it. Okay, that makes a little bit more sense.
Exactly.
Just trying to make sure that, give the schools a lot of money, and they need the security and all that, and want a good relationship, but it needs to be reimbursed fairly, so.
So that, to your point there, is it being reimbursed fairly? Because it sounded like maybe it wasn't, as far as the 50 an hour?
Thank you, Commissioner. Just as far as the FLSA, that caught my attention too when we were hearing about the third-party vendor, the sheriff and I hearing that at the first time, and then Phoebe being drawn into it. So immediately we contacted Lisa Carson, and she gave us the statute, so we're fine from a legal standpoint. Can I recite it to you verse and chapter? No. But I can tell you with the third-party vendor, we are out of any danger of not paying time and a half.
So, did you have?
No, I didn't. I was just wondering clarification on that. I know I'm used to a little bit of a different way how it's done. It's usually private to private or.
Yeah, and I'll tell you, also, I think it's important to note that the SRO for the school usually works that comp time. They're not getting paid overtime. But if we have to bring in additional resources, like for ball games and stuff like that, one deputy cannot cover that event. So those deputies that are having to come over and supplement that SRO are the ones receiving the overtime pay.
Thank you.
No, this is the question I had, is it seemed like earlier when you talked about working the events at the schools, that maybe that wasn't enough coming back to pay for those deputies. Are the schools reimbursing enough to actually cover for that overtime pay, or is that something we should look into?
I think it is something that we're looking into. I think it's something we'll continue to look into. Going into the second fiscal year here, that's something that's on my radar. So I think we need to probably continue to have those conversations.
Mayor?
Yeah, I think it's good to have these conversations to get our budget members up to date of what Phoebe and the work has been done in prior years. Maybe a new number needs to be looked at, but you're hitting the benchmark of what it was year before last. In the case of Renaissance, same thing with the fair, same thing with rodeo. All of those numbers need to be looked at. But we don't need to go back to trying to figure out who's, 100 different men and women. I mean, that's a nightmare. And I think the other comment, which it never goes anywhere, but I always like to make it, that if you're having a ball game in Brentwood or Franklin, it would be nice if we got the city folks to help. But they turn a deaf ear to that every single time we bring that up. But it's their children, it's their community, it's their parents that are there, and it's not just county But if you really wanna generate some conversation, try to get those individual police departments to help us out would be very helpful.
It's my understanding that, I mean, at least I know about Brentwood, they worked all those small games. And actually worked it at a discounted rate for a long time for the schools, kind of to help out. But it was more, it wasn't going back straight back to into the city coffers. It was going from the schools to the officers. And, they were actually getting paying less than, what everybody else was paying.
I know that we've had to supplement them with
Yes.
Brentwood officers for sure, because that's my familiarity, but, I don't know about the other municipalities.
Again, that's your job and role to reach out to them, because I think it is important, and all of that burden fall upon the sheriff's department to have to fund it. And Madam Chairman, while I've got a comment, and I appreciate what the sheriff is attempting to do in a lot of these areas, but the one area that I would like us not to address increasing or beginning to pay is in the escort services of the people that die here in our town. The cities don't do that. And we provide that service for them when they leave Williamson Memorial. And oftentimes that takes 2 or 3 men or women or a motorcycle, whatever the case may be. I'm very disappointed that our cities don't see that as an important role. But at the time, you'll always see our sheriffs out there, and I'm not for charging for that service, and I'll be honest with you. And we never have. There's always that appetite out there to try to get that low-hanging fruit. But I just think the people that'll have lived here and died in our community have paid those property taxes. And I know the Metro does it. They have private services that do it, but I appreciate the sheriff continue on the role of someone that's passed away, that we provide that service for them.
I agree with you 100%, because someone that's had it happen, it means so much. And I feel that's the least the county can do on their last day out of here. But thank you. I think it is an extremely important service. I back you 100% on that comment.
I wholeheartedly agree. Thank you for bringing that up. Chief Gilfan and I have had many conversations about this, because we track the numbers just so we know how we're allocating resources to that. But I'm in lockstep with you on that thinking, and that's my intention, is to keep doing that at no cost. And I think it's just the right thing to do. So.
See more questions on
Mayor,
that?
And I could be out of date on this one, but I think Brentwood still does escort for, they still do funeral escorts, the city of Brentwood does. Now, if they, did you stop, well, did that stop when you were done?
I don't know.
Yeah, I think they still do. Metro quit doing it. And that was, and a lot of the reasons they're getting away from is for liability reasons. But I don't disagree. I think it's still that hometown feel.
Franklin City quit doing it several years ago.
And I go back to Brentwood because obviously I used to work there, and those are the people that I also represent. And I want to make sure that they're getting credit for what they're doing or not doing. But I know we had those discussions, and there is a possibility that we may have stopped doing that as well, but I think that they still do.
It'd be nice to know that, Sheriff, to find that out. But, the largest, probably most active funeral home would be in Franklin.
No doubt about that. I don't think, I know Fairview doesn't have a funeral home anymore. Obviously, Franklin City has some small ones. Brentwood has one. I'm not sure about some of the other areas.
Well, the one out on Highway 100, one of your people could help me with that name for Fairview.
Well, there's one, the one in Davidson County is Harpeth Hills.
Yes.
So that's Metro. And the small funeral home in Fairview closed. They sold. And
How about Waters? We provide them, don't we?
We listed, yes, sir.
yeah, we took
They
that.
don't
Yes, sir.
charge
They
them.
don't always request, and they have a lot of funerals like, I think they do on their own, but anytime we're requested, we're there with them.
And the one and I'm getting digressed, you can turn me off here, but the one that goes down by the, I guess it's a Wendy's now, north,
Mount Hope.
Roundtree.
I think that's it. It's just my 2 cents, Madam Chairman. I'd just like to see us continue doing that.
I appreciate that. Sheriff, would you like to continue?
Sure. All right, we talked about the overtime pay. If you'll go over to page 2, and I hope we're tracking on page numbers here. Hope we're working off of the same document. I believe we are, but if we're not, we'll know soon enough. So the next line item that you'll see an increase in is advertising. And I'm gonna let Jennifer Davis talk about the transfer from the detention budget over to this budget to accommodate that line item.
So what we have here is a transfer of $10,000 from detention advertising into the sheriff's division advertising. This is to support the recruitment position that we were provided this year. So we're trying to reallocate those funds and use them in the sheriff's budget. You'll see another later transfer of an additional $10,000 as well. We had a total of 25 in the jail, so we're transferring 20 from the jail. We're leaving 5 in the jail for we need for advertising, but we will have, trying to reallocate those funds to utilize those with our recruiting position.
Next item, you'll see a decrease in the communication line item, and we have taken that money and moved it somewhere else within the budget. And again, I'll call on Jennifer Davis to.
Again, we're reallocating funds. We had available funds in this line. We're reallocating them to line item 541100 for data processing. And that is to help offset the cost of our current software programs and data programs within the sheriff's budget. So that's a reallocation of available funds.
Okay, you have zeros through the remainder of that page, so we'll flip over to the page 3 of 7. And what you're going to see throughout this budget is you're going to see several line items for utilities. And the reason that you see that in this budget now is for the new special ops building. And for reasons that I can't explain, but Phoebe or the mayor might be able to explain, is those utilities that we pay in the existing special op building does not come out of the sheriff's department budget. So where we weren't budgeting for anything in our existing facility, we're now putting funds into our budget for the new facility. And you're gonna see that throughout this budget. And you'll see that in the line item for maintenance and repair services, that new $68,000.
Sheriff, that was the exact question I was gonna answer. Was your special ops, wasn't that in the old building in front of where the 911? Can you tell us a little bit more what special ops is, what is stored there, what is done there? Because we haven't really had it in the budget before.
And so I would welcome any and all of you to come down and tour that facility. I think you would be really impressed with what we have in there from a resource standpoint and what we actually do in there. And I'm glad you asked that question because it gives me an opportunity to brag on Chief King and the job that he's done since he has assumed this new role in the special ops building, which he's not only over special operations, he's over special teams, he's over the fleet management, aviation program, and numerous things. So I think you would be the best to talk about the equipment that we have in there and what that looks like from an operational standpoint.
For all special teams, we have SWAT, Swiftwater, Honor Guard. We house all of that in there, all the equipment we have. We have about $6 or $7 million worth of equipment in that building that it's not good to sit outside. We have a lot of 2 armored vehicles. We're on the way to getting the 3rd one. That's something you can't store outside in case people, can get it and wreak havoc on the county. 3 helicopters are housed there, all fleet, all the extra cars come in and out of that building. When we buy cars, all of it starts there. We get them upfitted, we bring them back, we issue them out of that building. So we do have water rescue stuff, we have trucks, we have the 1 ton or the 5 ton trucks that we high water rescue stuff. I mean, it's just filled with that. Now, Parks and Rec uses that building, it's a county building. So we use about a half of it right now of what our storage is, which would accommodate the new building of what we have there. Not having everybody else's entities in our building would help out for inventory control. Any special equipment is housed there. We have rooms set up that we've actually taken from the front when they moved the archives out and stored like extra, if we're going to surplus things, we want it locked up so it doesn't walk away from other county entities that come in and browse through our stuff. So you name it, it's in that building. When we first moved down there, it was more as a place to house just the vehicles. But now we have, any special team training, any special team meetings, whatever is housed in that building too. So, we have everything down there. So, I hope it answers your question of what we have.
You talking about in the present one or the one as you move into the new one?
What'd you say?
Where it's in the old building now, you're talking about the new one?
I'm talking about the old building now is what we have in there now.
When,
Once we go to the new building, it'll be only the sheriff's office. Now, there's 6 different entities in there now. Parks and Recs, EMA, the Red Cross, fire departments, everything is in that building. But they're all stacked in the back because we keep the front clean, so I don't care what they do in the back of it, so.
Phoebe, is that being charged just regular county?
Yes, property management takes care of that building, and the cost associated with that is in their current budget.
Okay.
That will remain there because it's still a county facility, which we will have to man and we will have to manage, and utility and maintenance and everything. So that's why the new facility is being broken out, because it will just be solely for the sheriff's department.
Okay.
And I would also invite y'all to come up and take a look at the new facility, which is coming along really, really nice. Scheduled to be done mid-September. I was up there a couple of weeks ago, and they have really, really come a long way. How many yards of concrete did they pour?
180 yards in one day. Just to fill in the floor that they had to rip up to put.
That's up the hill where the Murph was, yeah.
Yes. It's pretty phenomenal. And so we've taken, and I will tell you, we've found an opportunity in many areas to reduce that budget of that building, but Captain King told me that that kind of got offset by some Franklin City codes.
We were tracking about $400,000 in savings where we changed the fencing to put a less elaborate fence up there for security wise. Changing the way the face of the building looks, where they were putting the siding on vertical, but then the bottom they were going horizontal. I said, why don't you just do it vertically, all of it, with a canopy? Saved us about $80,000 just doing that, because it's a different way to lay it. They were tracking about 400,000 savings so far. The City of Franklin Codes Department tacked on about 300,000 back to it. Having an oil water separator in the building for any kind of leaks we have. Just their codes have run it crazy. We're still tracking about 100 grand right now of savings. It's looking to be more about 350 to 400 total when it's done, if we don't go into any more roadblocks with the City of Franklin.
Can we overrule any of those city codes?
Yeah.
The short answer is yes. The long answer is it's not always there. It's a timing issue to get all this work done, but I mean the county does supersede city ordinances and codes, but it's not always that easy. And their codes are mighty stiff.
We had a 2-day meeting on camera systems alone because the codes, we have to have, what do they call it? Bomb resistant or blast resistant cameras in that building. because of where they were sitting. I said, move them up 10 feet and it goes away, and they did. So there's your savings. But that's the kind of codes that little bitty things like that sets it back. They shut us down for 2.5 months during the winter time of no work because of the permits and stuff they had to pull. So it's been crazy.
The moral of the story is, I just want y'all to understand, we are taking every opportunity to value engineer the project as it goes along, just as we are with the jail project and any of those things that we're involved in. We're really looking close at all of this stuff.
Quick question then, is that whole area, is that gonna be on City of Franklin sewer?
You talking about the new special ops building?
Special ops building and the jail, since it's all within the city limits of Franklin?
Well, it's county property, but it's in the city limits of Franklin.
Right.
So is that
So
your?
utilities, I guess, what's the sewer for that facility? Is that gonna be City of Franklin sewer?
Yes.
So,
Yeah, we don't have sewer.
We got sewer capacity issues.
We are not in the sewer business, we're in the
I know.
septic business.
Right. That's what I was
I
asking.
assure you, we have nothing up over that hillside.
Just wondering though, when that jail goes up, there's gonna be sewer issues.
all right, moving along, there's a 1.4% increase in the repair and maintenance of service vehicles, and that's just simply because we've added some to the fleet. It's not a huge upcharge. Moving over to page 4, you'll see a new line item there for lobbying services. This is another initiative that we are wanting to start within the sheriff's office. As some of you know, there are over 3,000 bills proposed annually at the legislative level. And there's no way that I have the time or the energy or the resources to monitor all of those bills. And as you are probably familiar, the county has a lobbyist that's paid through their budget, but not specific to law enforcement and law enforcement needs. And so in my conversations with the mayor, we felt like that this was a fair number to put in the budget, to have someone look out for our interest and keep me posted on the things that I need to know about, and tell me when I need to be there, when it's important for me to come down and testify, and basically be an advocate for the sheriff's office. I was talking with the mayor earlier today, and he said one bad bill would pay for this line item. So we feel like that's a good initiative to start, and that's the reason for that line item there.
I have a question on that.
Sure.
How is that paid to lobbyists? Is it
Contractual.
is it a set amount? Or is it according to how much time he works, or how do you?
It would be based on contract, and I'm assuming it would be similar to what the county does.
Flat amount.
So it's gonna stay this 50,000 no
Well,
matter.
you'll probably see that one go up 5,000 or 10,000 next year, depending on what's activities going, but, I would agree, Sheriff. 4 years ago, when Charles Sargent was up there, we had the best lobbyist in the world. Whenever we needed something, he was 100% in Williamson County, whether it was sheriff, highway, and he could wiggle through that budget and help you. Today, we don't have that kind of mechanism in place where our representatives can call the sheriff or get into the budget. It's not a shortcoming on their part. That's not their role. They're not the budget chair. And Charles was up there for 8 or 10 years. He knew wherever nook and cranny of a dollar was at. So that's one of the reasons we went, and our lobbyist has saved us literally hundreds of thousands of dollars. There's no reason to think that the lobbyist the sheriff's talking to can't do the same thing.
Moving on to the data processing supplies. These are softwares primarily. Some of it are annual cost, through the TBI, the fingerprint program and so forth. The big line item there at the bottom is a new software called Peregrine. It's a crime data analysis software that would not only be used by my crime analysis, Lisa Tate, who is behind me here, to help me produce data that is extremely cumbersome to pull out right now to get you the information you see in the monthly reports, just as one example. But not only that, it's about pulling data together from a crime analysis standpoint so that we can target where crime may be occurring in the county and looking for patterns and trends. But the beauty of this particular software, if I can expand on that just a little bit, is we have multiple software applications in the county. And I'm trying to pare those down to where we have one throat to choke, if you will, trying to get fewer vendors, and that'll give us more control over the softwares that we have. But right now, if I was going to search one of those software applications, I've got to touch every one of them and then compile the information. This particular software does it for you. So you do one search and it searches all platforms. We're going to get to an item here in a minute, records management software, which is an end of life that we have to replace. And anytime you have a move from one piece of software to another piece of software, you have an interface on both sides. And then you have data conversion. And those costs can be exorbitant as well. This software here would help us shave off those costs, those interface costs. So it's a multiple benefit to this particular software. The other software that you see above that is an employee performance software, and that's looking to replace an existing software, going to something that is more user-friendly, something that will give us the ability to, it's kind of like an electronic filing cabinet, if you will, and allow us to continue to promote the culture through accommodations, whether it be employee acts that are commended by citizens through email, through phone calls, through photographs. Anything can be housed in that, and more or less it's a, well, I would describe it as a electronic filing cabinet. Fleet management, that's the collective data. That's the correct collective data software. That's a inventory software. We currently do not have a good process or piece of software in place that will help us inventory our assets, particularly in quartermaster and our fleets. Madam Chair, you may remember a question you asked me a while back about fleet inventory. And so what I learned is that we were maintaining our inventory basically through a Excel spreadsheet. And so there is software out there that allows us to manage that software much more efficiently, and it will allow us to track maintenance. It will give us alerts on when maintenance is due, and we're not having to reach out and manually touch all of those vehicles. It will give us some capability to do things remotely that we just don't have right now. It'll make us much more efficient in managing our fleet. So those are the primary things that come up to that increase in the budget that we're requesting in that particular line item. And I, as it relates to software, I'll just say I think it's very important that we try to work smarter, not harder. And I think that if we spend money, if we spend extra money on software, I think it will save FTEs in the long run. So it will help us to be more efficient, which requires fewer people down the road. So that's the goal, is to spend money on something that we don't have to pay benefits to. If it will allow us to do our job better, more efficiently and more effectively. And I have Lisa Tate here. If you'd like to hear more about the crime analysis, I'm happy to bring her up to talk about that.
Anyone got any questions about the software?
Just one quick one. I mean, when you're looking, because this sounds like very specialty, like software, are there a lot of vendors for you to choose from, or are you pretty?
It depends. It depends on the software, it depends on the application that they're looking for, because some of them are sole source, and obviously, some of them are not, but one is not the same across the board. In my experience, in my time dealing with software vendors, they will promise you the world and then way underproduce. And so it's very important that we vet these companies, and that's one thing that we've been trying to do over the past year, is to analyze the software that we have and see which is actually providing us with the resources we need, or can we cut them out and try to replace it with something that will. And so we're looking at replacing, I know we've identified 3 that I can think of off the top of my head, and potentially more by looking at newer, improved software applications, that things that we've dealt with in the past have just become archaic, and they've been more, I call them mom and pop kind of vendors, maybe the low bid stuff that is not nearly as productive as what's out there now and available. Software is going to continue to change, as we know. I mean, that's not a bad thing, but it is important that we vet them fully, make sure that we're getting the best that's available out there on the market. Electricity is, again, another one of those new line items for the special operations facility. Gasoline, that's a moving target. We're projecting a 9.9% increase. That's simply a best guess. And then we get down to page 5 of 7, which is the law enforcement supplies. And this is all criminal investigations. And I can't emphasize enough the importance of having the tools and resources to help these staff solve these cases. Solving cases is so critical in our business. And I have Captain Tamika Sanders here with me today, and would you like to maybe come to the podium and just touch on each of these softwares and just maybe an overview of what these softwares do? It's really amazing the tools that are available to us today compared to back when I was a detective in the 90s, where we depended on a pen and a paper and our ability to get confessions out of suspects. Now we have all of these forensic tools and resources available that I don't know what we'd do without them.
How are y'all? So one of the pieces of software is called chain analysis, or either TRM. There are 2 separate ones. And it's software that provides investigative leads and allows the tracking of cryptocurrency through the blockchain. Please don't ask me to explain that, because I cannot. But anyway, we had a previous tool that expired, and over the past few years, we have been able to successfully stop transactions and recover cryptocurrency exceeding $600,000. So basically, we have several of our citizens that get caught up in jury duty scams and things like that, where they end up depositing their money into some of these cryptocurrency ATMs, and we're able to track it down and get that back. Another piece of software is called a Celebrite Collector, and it allows forensic extractions from Mac computers. And right now we don't have any tools that will do that. And so our forensic expert is able to save some of the data onto drives, but we don't get everything with doing that. But having this piece of software which examine Mac devices specifically will allow him to get that evidence. The last one is called Passware, and it's a password cracking software that cracks passwords on phones and computers. And we've had recent success with an ICAC case, which is your Internet Crimes Against Children cases that we work a lot of. And this particular case involved a sex offender, and that would not provide the password. And if we had not had that particular tool, we would not have been able to get the evidence that he is currently being prosecuted on. So that's the software, and I can tell you a little bit more about how important they are with as many digital cases. I mean, every case has something that involves a computer. Your cell phone is a computer. And we need to be able to get that information and that evidence off of there to successfully prosecute those cases. I want to say this, I got some numbers too. Just in 2024, we worked 82 cases that involved exploitation of children in our county alone. Paul, who is our forensic digital examiner, examined 595 devices, which include cell phones, computers, and data storage devices, and that was in 2024 only. It resulted in 102 terabytes of data that was examined. For comparison, 102 terabytes would be equivalent to billions of pages of paper or a warehouse full of warehouse-sized collection of paper. This year alone, we have received 32 tips involving sex crimes against children. We have examined 156 devices and 18.2 terabytes of information, and that's just in 2025. So we're kind of limping along, but it would be easier and better if we had better software and updated software.
Sheriff, at the Rotary, we had a couple of your, they really weren't detectives, come and speak about the internet crimes against children. I was shocked at what they said. It was shocking, but it was very fascinating. It was totally, I didn't even realize all that was going on.
It's disturbing.
It is.
Also, would like to bring Lisa Tate up. As part of this line item, you have our license plate recognition cameras. And I wanted to tell you about that program. I want to talk about what we have existing and what we have proposed. And she has a map that she can share with y'all. So, Lisa?
Real quick,
Sure.
the internet safety stuff too, is that Zach Taylor just came out to our neighborhood, Deputy Taylor came out there yesterday and did a presentation, which anybody wants him to do it, he did a great job, I think it's focusing what you're discussing. We firsthand had an issue with one of our children, so it's out there, and the more high-tech they get on trying to commit crimes, I agree, the more high-tech we gotta get to try and fight the crimes. So, I'm not surprised to see that list growing.
Okay. Good evening. Thank you for your time. I'm glad to hear that Zach represented us well out there. He's always very friendly with the community. I think he really loves his job, so. I'm gonna pass these out to you just so we can talk a little bit about our LPRs, license plate readers, or automated license plate readers, if you'd like to look. This is a rough map for you of kind of current and future projections, if you'd like to look at that. They are color-coded in groups there. So your first grouping is gonna be our current. We have 6 that are through Flock. That's on there as an existing $15,000 annual cost to operate the system and the software to run the searches in. So those are your orange points. Those are along county roads, not state roads. We are currently in the process of completing, a grant purchase of Vigilant, which is a competitor Flock, different system of LPR cameras. We're gonna be installing 11 of those on state routes. They're the only approved vendor to be placed along state routes. So we're trying to close out in the next few months finishing that. That's purchased through the Violent Crime Initiative Fund through the state. And so that is on there. I think you've seen that on some of the resolutions in the Maine County Commission as we've been working our way through that process. The plan is to also expand our Flock network with 5 additional cameras. So the blue points are gonna be your Vigilant state route locations. And then this final section of 5 in kind of a purple, pink, fuchsia, whatever color you want to call it. That would be the expansion of 5 additional flock cameras. And the idea there is to just kind of increase our eyes on the county roads where we currently have those gaps. There are still very viable routes for crime to happen, for people to travel to and fro that may not be picked up on a state road. So that is the ultimate goal. Coming up in here, Sheriff, do we need to talk about that as well, that amendment?
We do. So what we have learned since the law enforcement committee is we've had a budget number, and we've since got the exact number of what that cost is. And I think that we're going to ask for an amendment of $5,000 for the vigilant cameras, which is the next to the last thing on your line item there, to cover what the actual cost will be compared to what I thought it was gonna be. So that's something we need to take up at the appropriate time, but.
Yes, sir.
Any questions about the 2 camera systems that we have and our deployment? I mean, obviously, I think y'all know, we were able to apprehend, well, not apprehend, but we intercepted is a better word, the homicide suspect out of Murfreesboro recently who had killed the baby. And we caught him on a flock camera. And actually intercepted him, and he's the gentleman that took his life before we could apprehend him. But that was completely a result of the camera. Murfreesboro had entered his tag in what we call a hot list, and meaning that we're looking for this vehicle, so should it pass any camera that we have access to in our county, then it would alert us immediately. That happened in that particular case. And that's how we knew where he was and how to go and intercept him. So that's one high-profile case. I can tell you my familiarity with it at the Brentwood Police Department, in my familiarity with it here at the county since being here, it is a phenomenal tool. And I get the whole the debate about Big Brother. Again, I would argue that, we're putting these on public roads, and we're not in a position to where we have the resources or the manpower to go back and look at the thousands, if not millions, of vehicles that pass these cameras on a day-to-day basis. The only time we would look at this is if we had a time frame of a crime, a date and a time that we could go back and look at the vehicles that passed the camera in the location of a crime, or if it was in a hot list, which means it was already a suspect's vehicle who was entered, or that was entered into the system. That would be the only time that we use this technology, and these tags are not stored. I think our storage is 30 days, is that right, Lisa?
30 days through flock and 90 days through vigilant.
30 days through flock and 90 days through vigilant. So I just wanted to give you that information as well.
So 2 things. I'm assuming too that, because you worked in Brentwood, they have their own cameras too.
Yes.
Do we know actually how many cameras, even with the municipalities, we have across the county?
I know, I can't tell you today how many they've expanded to in Brentwood, but when I was there, it was my goal to try to create a geofence around the city. Any point of ingress or egress in the city, I wanted to have a camera so that we knew every vehicle that came into the city. Now, I don't know about Franklin necessarily, and I don't know about the other cities in the county. So, obviously, we're talking about county roads and state routes, but if they have these cameras deployed, then we have access to them. So we get their data too. So it's a force multiplier. And it's not just their data, but it's anybody that is a customer with one of these companies. We have access to their data as well as commercial data that is collected through tow companies or people that repossess cars, those sorts of things. So we have access to that data as well.
And do they talk to each other, Vigilant and Flock? Is there
It's 2 different databases, and I think the answer to that is no.
No. That's where we come in, and we're running concurrent searches in our systems, but within their own network, they do communicate, yes. So we, as long as they have, if a neighborhood HOA has purchased a flock camera, which is a lot of their base as well, and they choose to put one in their private neighborhood, they can choose to share search access with law enforcement. So we would have access to search proactively on an investigation like that, or a hot list hit as well. So a known wanted person, something where there's already a warrant on file, or a stolen vehicle, or a stolen plate, organized retail crime, homicide suspects, et cetera, Amber Alerts, any of those things. Once those plates have been entered into those systems that are in a national system, they will alert us through the LPRs. And so that's sort of that's the information coming into us, just like the homicide case that he was referring to, that we intercepted. And then otherwise, if we are kind of after a crime has occurred, working that investigation to try to place back a location of a suspect or an incident, using that network.
The 90-day requirement on the vigilant side, is that a state? Because those are going with it, you can have it statewide, or that's just vigilant, how they?
Lisa, do you know the answer to that question? I think we can choose the time frame that we choose, that we want to retain that data. I don't know why we choose one over the other.
I believe it's a max maybe at the state level, right? And I can't remember if that's a national or a federal requirement. Some states are more restrictive than 90 days, which is why some of them are set down to 30. But I think in the state of Tennessee, please don't quote me on that specifically, but I believe it's 90. That's our current policy as well. Now, if we may retain specific data related to it if it's evidence in a case. So, but all of the rest of those searches, those thousands of reads that he's talking about that are in the system that we're not looking at, they're not kept past those days. But if we find evidence of the crime and it's tied to that case, then it goes in with the evidence, just that specific, those specific searches.
Yeah, I think that was one of the things that came concerned me, was like, how long's my data right there in a system, because sometimes they're hackable. Maybe.
No, they don't keep it beyond that.
The last question I had is, I mean, and I know this probably has something to do with the license plate reader systems, but is there any sort of technology that can help deter speeding? Because I've gotten a lot of requests out there.
I wish.
There is, it's on Bethesda Road, and we'll be glad to let you have it for a while.
If
Well, I saw one of the cameras right there,
If you were to develop something, then I think that you would probably make a lot of money, but you would put us out of a job, so.
Well, the state legislature banned speed cameras without a real life.
So red light cameras were a thing of the past, and that's something that was highly debatable, and it was a tool that many, because it's a civil process.
I'm just hoping that the technology is catching up, that somehow we can, just a deterrent, so people don't speed, I don't want people
Sure.
to speed, but.
So the best tool that we have right now to use to combat speeding is we are able to collect data. We have devices and technology available that we can deploy on a road over a period of time. We can pick the period of time. It can be a day, it can be a week, it can be a month, and it'll run a report, and it will tell us every car that passed this device and what their speed was by day and by time. So then it will compile a report, so we can look and see when the majority of people traveling that road are speeding, and then we can deploy our resources accordingly. So if you've got one person at one particular time on one particular day, well, it's not a very good wise way to deploy your resources. But if you've got a particular time of day, on any given day, that you have a high volume of speeders based on this technology, then we can put our traffic people out there and try to curb speeding that way. That's the best thing we've got going right now.
College group down there, where why?
And all you gotta do is ask for that, and we're happy to deploy it. We do that frequently, and then the speed trailers are another way that we utilize that.
We'll do that.
I just want to make a comment, and correct me if I'm telling this wrong, but I believe this is correct for the people that are watching this out there and everybody in here. On those LPRs, the only thing that it tracks is the actual license plate. It doesn't track the information attached to the license plate. It doesn't catch people's faces in the cars. It doesn't do any of that. Those are all these information that's been put out there and people worry about. What law enforcement will do is take that tag that was in that area at that time, then they run it. Now, they might be able to see that it belongs to, a certain type of vehicle, but it's the tag, no information connected to that tag. And I believe that's still the case. And then because even the neighborhoods that have LPRs, they don't know who the car belongs to. It just shows this tag on this car was here at this time. And that's it, no more. But it's a very good tool.
And it's a tool, it's a lead to start the rest of that investigation, and that's where our human investigators, take that up from there and do the rest of the legwork on connecting those pieces to prove. So.
And to answer somebody's question, Brentwood has about 10 LPRs, not including the private ones in the neighborhood.
Yes, and to expand on that, I believe their plan is to expand. I don't want to speak for them, but I feel like I have heard that indirectly. And then Franklin is also in the process of deploying vigilant cameras. I believe it's in maybe 20-something. Again, I don't have those exact numbers. I think Fairview has at least one flock camera in their area that they utilize. There's some down maybe in Spring Hill, so some of the community, but again, that expands our network, so it helps us figure out a path if we're trying to lock down some information on a crime, so.
If they pass more than one camera, then it kind of gives us an ABC, kind of follow the breadcrumbs, if you will. So that helps us too, because you can do it by time. You can see kind of their route of travel.
And the cameras are set directionally, so the ones that's particularly at those edges, like he was talking about, we're trying to capture vehicles coming into the county. So the ones that are close to the county lines as they're entering the county, and then hopefully maybe if we need to pick up on additional cameras.
The last thing I would say is, we do have homegrown crime, but I'm gonna say that the majority of our crime is traveling criminals, people coming from outside the county to commit crime, because we are an affluent community and it makes us a target-rich environment. So that's the purpose of trying to capture these points of ingress and egress, is to help us maintain that low crime rate that we enjoy here in Williamson County.
Anything else I can answer for you?
Thank you, Lisa. Sure. Next line item is natural gas, and that's again the new special ops building. You'll see over to page 6. Office supplies, again, an increase based on the increase in personnel, 10.2%. We have a decrease in uniforms, and that's just basically adjusting that down based on what our trends have been. Savings of 15.6%. Oh, I'm sorry. Jennifer corrected me. That was due to a one-time cost that we had in there for standard or specialized gear. Water and sewer, again, that's the new facility, special ops building. The other supplies and materials. Jennifer, I'm gonna let you speak on that.
That's the additional 10,000 that I mentioned earlier that we're transferring from detention. This would be used for the recruitment position again for the supplies and events that recruitment officer would be attending. And that's reallocating those funds that are in the budget in detention.
Service and staff development, a 1.9% increase. Page 7. 15% decrease in data processing equipment, and that was again a one-time cost that we no longer have in the budget. Same for the law enforcement equipment, correct, Jennifer?
Correct.
Okay, and this is the big one. This other equipment, $57,900, that line item. We currently entered into a contract with Axon, and that was a 5-year contract for body cameras, in-car cameras, and tasers. Okay, so this is the second installment payment under the current contract. All right, and what we're gonna talk about when we get over to capital projects, which may come back over to operating, am I getting off the
That would
base?
be year 3. This would be year 3.
This is your,
Because we've got year 2 already built in, which is the first 1.3
okay.
to pay. year three.
But that's before we talk about the new.
Yes.
Okay, so we're gonna talk about that when we get over to capital projects, so we'll come back to that. This is money that's already been approved over a 5-year contract period, and it was for those three things: in-car camera, body camera, and tasers. We'll come back to that. Bottom line is our budget requests are up 13.8%. That includes the monies for the salaries as it is presented to you today. And we need to ask for that amendment on the $5,000 to the line item for the vigilant cameras in the law enforcement supply line item. And that's the sheriff's budget.
So it's 12,000 plus 5,000?
Big one.
Is there a new line item or is it in addition to the 12,000?
It's in addition to the 12,000 that's already in the line item, so it'd be 12,000 plus 5,000.
Which line item number is that?
543100.
Question on the personnel, are the benefits, the healthcare benefits part of that personnel cost, that's separate?
That's in separate budget.
Okay, so you do that as a separate line item for county?
Yes, sir.
Would you say that again?
Yes, the benefits were included.
No, I'm talking about the line item.
Line item 543100, law enforcement supplies.
On page 5.
Page 5.
But it's already in here.
We want an additional 5,000 in addition to the 12,000 that's already listed.
Oh,
They're asking for an amendment of 5.
but that doesn't have anything to do with your sign. You backed up, right?
Correct.
Yeah.
We'll go on this. Get it on the floor, vote on it, or we vote on all of them.
Well, you've got to vote on, you have 5 programs tonight.
We're just on
But you gotta vote separately on each one of them. Now, what you can do is offer the amendment of 5 additional thousand to change the 25,903,413 to whatever $5,000 makes more on that.
908.
908.
Do we need to get it on the floor to
Yes, please.
first?
Yes.
Can I get a motion to get this?
Motion.
So now, is the motion just on the additional 5 or on the entire budget?
On the entire thing, and then we'll do the motion to.
Okay.
25,903,413. Is that what you're saying?
For the initial. 25,903,413, yes. Okay,
David made the motion and I seconded.
Thank you.
does somebody want to motion to add on the 5,000
The 5,000 amendment.
on the 543100?
Correct.
We have a vote on that, everybody that agrees, say aye.
Aye.
Anybody disagree? So the motion to add the 5,000 passed. Now we're ready to vote on the total budget.
Can I ask a question, Madam Chairman? Phoebe, we have laid out in front of all the members on the budget committee, the item that Brad Coleman sent to us, looking at the valuation of the penny. He's estimating that to be about 1930. Would you give us a snapshot of where we are before we start voting for these, the 25 and then the 411 million in jail and all of those things? Give us a snapshot to the best of your ability where we are today in relationship to our revenues and our expenses based on the information you have as we've gone through these budgets.
So at this time, total general fund, including what you see in front of you, what you have to approve now, the sheriff, but the entire county general fund is seeing a total increase of $14 million. That is a 8.9% increase to expenses. Right now, we are looking at what we have in front of us for revenues of only a little over 2% increase. So there is a shortage between the rate of growth in our expenditures and that of our revenues. So we are looking at a gap as a whole. The increase for this budget, just this one is obviously 3,137,000 now. Most of that is for salaries, and then the Axon agreement, that is for this year, which makes up the 2.7. But I just wanted to throw that out there right now with this and every other budget that you will see over this next month in front of you is a total increase of 14 million. And I, at this point, do not have those additional revenues to cover that.
So the answer to make that difference, 14 million difference is?
I will continue to explore new options for revenue increases. Other than that, the only option that I see would be to ask for a tax increase.
Are there any opportunities to save costs? I know the mayor has said that there may not be much of a cost savings in the healthcare benefit proposals that we're looking at. But I know we're looking at always increasing revenues, great, but if there's any fixed cost that we could also look at decreasing, and I don't know if we're still working with the schools on if there's any revenue there or any cost savings, but we haven't had much conversation around where can we save costs without segregating the services that we need in the county.
We do not, I will add to that 14 million that I do not have the final number yet for our liability insurance. So that may or may not increase, it may decrease. So that may increase your 14 million or not. That is what needs to be, I guess, considered through this process is as you go forward approving these budgets. I ask for your direction on where and what areas you wish to find those cuts because as is now, is a $14 million increase.
And you have to remember also that last year we had a 4 million, I'm gonna round off 3.5, but it's just say $4 million in the, gosh, I'm just drawing a blank.
Equalization ratio.
Equalization, we lost 4 million in that. We're gonna lose 4 million this year in the equalization. You borrowed, at the wish of the commission, you borrowed last year, you took quite a bit of money out of fund balance to make the budget work without a tax increase last year. But it's imperative that we lay the baseline, because this is the first time you're beginning to see these budget numbers, is that unless the revenue changes in some way, you are looking at a property tax increase. Now,
Commissioner Smith, would you like to propose a cut to the sheriff's budget?
No, I would not. When you have to list out the priorities, I think, of the core need for government, local government, I don't think law enforcement is where I want to cut any dollars, or infrastructure or education. So I think it's a matter of, are there fixed costs that we possibly could look at seeing reductions on and really, I don't know what our contract services, look like. Are there some possible way to negotiate with our vendors? Is there a possibility that we could hold off on raises halfway through the year for some of our higher paid staff? And I think that there's some options out there that I would like to pursue. I feel like if we do a property tax increase, it works against what we're trying to do, which is to make sure that Williamson County does become more affordable for the folks that want to live here. So I'm open to cost savings, alternative revenue generation. Is there a way we can do private-public partnerships? I think there's a lot of options out there that we could look at covering some of the, maybe I would consider the non-essential services that we need to fulfill that still provide this quality of life that we want and amenities that we want. But 14 million, I'm actually impressed. That was really only that much, Phoebe, so I think 14.
We'll have an increase.
Yeah, but I would like to get to the point where
I'll
we
add,
can.
I'll add more, 10 more.
I mean, I would like to get to the point where we can get to the 75, 85, 95, have some sort of progression, not only for our law enforcement, but also, for our teachers. So, I don't have all the answers. I know there's options out there, there's possibilities out there. I don't know if you've all heard, but, my employer's been in the news lately, and so we're definitely looking at creative ways to, cut our budgets, and it's not easy, but doing a property tax increase right now in today's climate, where I know people are struggling, I would be willing to give an entire weekend to sit down and brainstorm ways to keep that from happening.
I feel like the county's always been very thrifty. That's the reason they gave us 0 increase. The only thing they said they could increase was the salaries. You're not gonna get 14 million. I mean, sheriff's department, you wanna give people money, well, you still gotta have human resources. You gotta have everybody else to fund, to take care of them. So, and remember, when you vote for any budget that's higher, you're voting for a tax increase. You can't sit there and vote against a tax increase and vote for budgets that are higher than they were the year before.
I don't know that I agree with that. I just think that you've got to find ways to bring in the revenue to cover up, to cover those gaps. I don't like the fact that the only mechanism we really have as a county commission that we know we can count on is property tax increases. But I would think that there's ways that we could work with we have a very generous county, and, we see it all the time in the donations we get, the contributions we get. I just think that it'd be worth the time to figure out, how do we bring in more revenue for Parks and Rec, and how do we bring in revenue for some of those great things that we offer to our county residents that maybe they'd be willing to pay a little bit more for, to know that we have a fully staffed law enforcement, and that, we can bring in the politician. Eddie's got the money he needs to fix the roads when that comes up. So that's just where my head is right now. So I don't know that, while I'm okay with approving, I think that Jeff and his staff has done a really good job of putting this budget together, and I feel like law enforcement is one of those things I don't want to try and go and try and find cuts on. Actually, want to try and figure out how to get more money, to you. I think overall, we got to look at each one of these budgets separately and try and find those savings where we can that aren't going to hurt our people.
Are we ready to vote on the amendment for the sheriff's budget of $25,908,413? Everybody that agrees? Say,
I think you already.
yeah, we already motioned.
Yeah, we have a motion for, did you vote on the,
Yeah,
amendment?
yes, I know we're voting on the
As
table
amended.
as amended. Everybody that agrees, say aye. Aye. Anybody that disagrees, passes 5-0. Next is traffic control, Sheriff.
Okay. This is the crossing guard budget, and this only includes the 4% raise increase across the whole budget. So there is no change aside from that.
Second.
Does anybody have any questions? Ready to vote on the traffic control budget of $376,365. All that agree, say aye. Aye. Anybody against? Passes 5-0. Next budget is the jail corrections. Sheriff, please.
Okay, the same principles apply as it relates to salaries and overtime, those sorts of things. You'll see the decrease in the advertising, and that was the money that was transferred over to the sheriff's side that Jennifer talked about earlier. So page 1, there's really no additional changes. Page 2, you've got a slight increase there to the maintenance and repair services, and that has something to do with the sprinkler that's coming due this year. 5-year sprinkler inspection that's coming due. You'll see a decrease in the maintenance and repair services, and
That was a one-time
one-time cost, right?
inspection cost.
All right.
I got a question on that. You know, we approved spending for some dental equipment last year, so it could be in-house. Has that proved to save money? I know it saves employees time.
Well, we had some issues with our dentist, and Carol is down here on the end of the table, and she can answer that question and let you know where we are on that.
So, good evening, everyone. So, yes, we did have a dentist that came in-house with our equipment. Things went well, we just had some procedural things with him that we weren't comfortable with. So we are in the process of securing a new dentist to come in. I can just give you a basic, this dentist that we had charged us per day. So his daily fee was $1,500. If we sent one individual out to the dentist that we use, it could be anywhere from $3,000 to $6,000, depending on how many teeth that dentist pulled, or what that dentist did. So has it saved us in the long run? Yes. Once it gets to going up again, I think we'll see a significant savings in the dental department.
Okay, thank you.
That leads us to the next line item there, which is the medical and dental services. But the biggest thing that's impacting the increase to this budget has to do with an additional nurse and the budget number that we've been given to add a nurse for an additional 12 hours a day. And this is one of those things where we always are having a problem with the medical costs and having to come back and ask for more money at the end of the year. Likely gonna have to do it again this year. But again, I'm gonna ask Carol to speak on this as it relates to this request.
So yes, we only have one nursing position at night for our entire facility. And that nurse is there for 12 hours and is expected to do all of the things that need to be done. The med pass itself takes usually about 3 hours of her 12-hour shift. And she also has to attend any emergencies on the floor, anything coming in new to booking that they need. So there's a lot of variables with that one individual being able to get that job done effectively. The juvenile services also have expressed that they would like to have some additional hours for the evening time. And we have not been able to provide that because that nurse is not able to go over and do things that they're needing, especially one of the things that they're asking, that they're asking for is they're wanting a nurse to pass their meds in the evening. We have a nurse that can go over and pass them during the day, but we don't in the evening. So this additional 12 hours will also encompass a little bit for them as well. And in the evening time, that just seems like the nurse, when she's called to book in, or if we have reporters that come in on Fridays to serve, that's a lot if she's got to do an intake on, say, 12 to 15 people for the evening. So this nurse would be able to be a supplement and work up into that booking department and help with those additional hours and manpower for that.
Okay. You'll flip over to page 3. Data processing equipment or supplies. Captain Euchre, if you'd like to talk about the RFID costs there.
Yes, so last year we purchased the Guardian RFID system. It's basically a handheld tracking device that helps us monitor anything and everything that we do with the inmates, whether we feed them, move them, when we're doing count, anything and everything having to do with the inmates. Guardian RFID has come out with an updated version of their system. And this updated version gives us a lot more ability to do a lot more things. With scheduling the inmates, if we need to put them on a schedule or something, it'll automatically notify the deputies that this inmate needs to be moved to this classroom or this, wherever they need to go. It also has timers built into the handheld systems to notify them when they do their checks. It helps keep track of diets for the inmates. It's really just, it's a benefit to the staff to have this system up and running the way that it needs to be with this newer system. It's also going to give us 5 additional Guardian handheld devices, because now that we're closing our gap with our staffing, the 15 that we have is sometimes just not enough. So give us 5 more devices on the floor, and these devices are about the size of a cell phone that the staff carry with them, and they log everything on these devices versus having to try to remember what they're doing, when they did it, and who they were involved in, and going back to the computer and trying to log it. It helps us stay in guidance with the TCI regulations.
Okay, the remainder of page 3 stays the same, all zeros, and if you'll flip over to page 4, you'll see that the total increase to the jail budget is 4.4%.
Can I get a motion to get the jail correction budget on the floor?
Second.
Has anybody got any questions for the sheriff about it?
I'm gonna make an amendment. I think the world of what you do, but I'm not in favor of spending another $280,000 for another nurse. I think you do a wonderful job. I don't think we're running a dentist office. If they have teeth that are hurting or something, they can wait till the next 12-hour shift and not worry about it during the day. I understand your logic, but I just listened to 2 commissioners here talk about figure out ways to cut spending.
Well, can I clarify something real fast?
Sure.
So this nurse would not be working during the day. She would be in a late afternoon or nighttime. She would come in and supplement the one nurse that is there. The dental part of it, the dental office, that dentist will bring in his own assistant to assist him in doing what he does for us, so.
And I appreciate that clarification, but it's costing us $280,000 more to provide it to us.
Mayor, if I may.
Sure.
I just want to throw this all out there. One of the issues that we're having with our medical staff and being able to retain them is the fact that no nurse wants to work at night by themselves because of the stress and pressure that they're under, the inability to do their job and do it correctly. So they're cutting corners, which is setting us up for issues, and it's also setting up themselves for issues when it comes to their medical license. So one of the ways to fix that was to try to get a secondary individual on night shift so that they are not running overwhelmed by themselves.
So you talked about the RFID, that management system. And it sounds like, I mean, literally everything, every movement, every interaction is tracked. Is there a way that you can use the data from that system to determine peak hours, and maybe instead of a 12-hour shift, maybe there's, a certain time of the evening that is the busiest that you might do a partial shift? So it's not 280,000, maybe it's a 2-hour shift just to provide a little relief.
I think we would have a hard time finding someone to come in for 2 hours. We did ask them originally for a 40-hour number as well. But that would encompass the whole 7 days. That would just be 5 days a week. And we might be able to critique when we are more when there's a lot more flow into the detention division.
I was just thinking medically specific. I mean, I know you can't necessarily bank on when an emergency is gonna happen, but if you have certain evenings where bookings are higher and you're having to do the intake, you know, maybe that would be a way to supplement.
We asked for a number for a 6-hour-a-night nurse as well, so 50% of that number. And the company basically, Ms. Tina Smith just basically said she'd never be able to staff that because nobody's looking to work 6 hours a night. They're looking, I mean, she could never guarantee that they were gonna find someone that's only gonna want to work 6 hours a night. So we can go back to the drawing board and try different things and figure it out, but.
How much was the 40-hour week?
132,368.
Is this a staffing company that's doing this? Is this like?
This is our in-house medical provider.
Are there other possible vendors that we could look at?
We talked to the Williamson County Hospital about, Chad started that initiative to see if they would be interested in partnering with us.
Yeah, and they would be, well, they're interested in seeing if they're interested, I guess you could say. So we've got to get them some data to see if it's something that they even be willing to. But this is our third vendor in the past 3 years. Every vendor, you're going to run into the same issue. We're very unique in Williamson County. Most of our nurses drive just like most of our staff come from way out of town. So in order for them to incentivize them, they have to pay them more to come here than what you would pay someone in a Rutherford County or in a Sumner County or something like that.
This is a further drive.
So, Madam Chairman, to interrupt, you've had your discussion. I'm gonna make a motion because I don't believe the taxpayers wanna pay for this service. That's what I'm hearing from this board. I'm making a motion to reduce this budget $280,000. If I get a second, so be it.
Second.
Anybody got any more questions on?
I have just, and I appreciate what the mayor's trying to do because it sounds like a lot of money for, but I know it's expensive to do those services, but has there ever been a direct hire where they actually just work for the sheriff's department and there may be some oversight stuff that comes with it being contracted and all that stuff that seems like that would be.
I don't know the history of that or if there's ever been any consideration for that, but
So I think
you're talking about benefits and.
Yeah, I think in order to do that too, they're gonna have a doctor that they need to report to, because the nurses they don't make the calls, they notify the on-call doctor, and the doctor is the one that's writing the scripts and all that stuff, so I
That's
don't.
part of the services with them, yeah.
And that, Chad, is, I mean, your very explanation is the reason the 280 is labeled here as 12 hours of nursing staff coverage. I sympathize with you. I really do. But when I look at medical and dental services, well over $2 million, that's a penny on the tax rate. That's a penny we're having to spend for inmates. And I've got employees here that have high deductibles, out-of-pocket expenses. Looking at a tax increase, it may not go through, but I want you to know where I'm coming from.
No, that's nothing personal there.
What kind of lawsuit issue, I mean, sometimes save on one end and pay out on the other, but have we had a lot of lawsuit issues with the medical services in the jail over time? I don't know.
None that have been won, but we do periodically get lawsuits filed for lack of medical care or inability for them to care or what have you.
But we have to lose them.
Does this hurt any of our certifications to not have adequate medical services there at those times?
No, but it puts it puts the liability back on us for not having those, because now you have deputies passing pills, or every time we turn around, because the deputies are not gonna make health calls. So anytime something happens, it's gonna be 911, and we're gonna be paying for ambulances, we're gonna be paying for Williamson Medical Center, even if it's for something very minor, we're not gonna be the determining factor of whether or not they get seen by a healthcare provider.
Are we also at risk of having the folks that we do? I mean, I think you said one of the things is that it's not a comfortable situation for the staff to be there by themselves at night. Is there a risk of not being able to get qualified people to be there if there's not
Yes.
this extra?
We have had a few times where maybe the nurse called out and had to leave because she was sick or whatever. If we had the emergency, there was nobody up there on site to take care of the inmates, and we had to call 911 and have them come get them and take them to the hospital.
Or they'll have to call in from a temp agency, so they're sending us nurses that don't know our facility, they don't know our inmates, they don't know anything. So their responses are less than what we're looking for.
Do you have a problem with some of the inmates saying they're sick and they're really not? I'm sure you do.
Sure. But we also, we try our best to charge a $25 sick call to be seen by medical. If they're indigent, they don't pay it. But if they're not indigent, they will pay that fee, but some of them they'll pay the fee to see the provider.
Have you thought of any of the telemedicine, where they do it by video? Would that even work?
I'm not even sure what that would be like. I mean, I'd be willing to bet we would still have to go through a third-party vendor like we currently are, in order to have the doctor and the staffing.
I do know many years ago that the sheriff's office did employ nurses. When I first started, they were in-house, employed by Williamson County Sheriff's Department. I think they got away from that due to some other issues. The liability was so great on the sheriff's office with staffing, because our third-party vendor, they have their own legal team as well. Our legal team talks to theirs whenever there is a lawsuit filed or things of that nature. There is a little bit of a buffer there by having that third-party company provide those services for us.
Mayor, you want to cut out the whole amount. I tend to want to cut out to just one 40-hour week.
I have a motion. Make an amendment to it.
Can I amend the mayor's motion of $280,000 to $132,000? Somebody want a second?
The 132?
To $132,000, that's for one 40-hour week nurse. Would that help a lot?
You gotta get a second, Madam Chair.
Oh, she does.
I'll second it.
Oh, yeah.
Listen, I'm all about, I thought that, I hear that there's a need. I also think that it's a really interesting idea. In my profession, I have run across multiple vendors who provide, urgent care, mental health, and also, primary care through virtual means, right? Whether that's a standalone, pod that they can use, or like the video system that you mentioned. So I think, I agree with what the mayor is saying. I wonder if there's a way that we can provide a stopgap in the meantime while we investigate other opportunities for maybe alleviating some of the calls on that nurse position.
So, Madam Chairman, you can't have another motion, but you could have an agreement between the five of us to approve this budget without the 288 and have Chad and them come back with their solution other than what you all heard. Because if you pick 132, that's the number.
Right.
Let them go back and come back to us and say, okay, these are your options.
Can we defer the approval of this budget until we
You
get?
defer the whole budget. I mean, you have the right to do that. I'm saying you could approve the budget minus, and I think you're hearing us, we've got some hangups on this. And it's just the dollars and cents, not you're not doing a good job. So it's up to you, Madam Chairman. You get to control the meeting.
I go within approving it with less the 280,000 and then let them come back.
You'd have to withdraw your second to
Okay,
get that.
You gotta
Withdrawn.
withdraw first.
There.
Sorry, Diane.
Now you're back down to take out the 288.
Okay.
Now, the 288 is new in addition, not taken away from what you already have now, right?
Correct. And then if they find a solution, there's a few more weeks in this budget process that we have to go through.
Do they need to bring it back to this budget committee?
Yes, ma'am.
When they find a solution?
Yes, ma'am.
And they would contact Ms. Diane about they have.
They
Well, we have already on your schedules, Madam Chairman, second readings is in, it's the third column there on the far right.
Okay, and they could come back then.
May
5th
May
would
5th.
be
Or-
second readings we need.
Another option you have would have the sheriff withdraw the budget minus 288, and you all won't need to take a vote.
I think we'll go back to the medical provider and see if we can come up with an option that is more agreeable or amenable to everybody. I don't know what that is, or if it even exists. Worst case scenario, we'll just continue to do what we're doing with what we got, and we'll do the best we can do.
So without putting words in your mouth, are you gonna take out the 288, or do you want us to vote it to take it out?
Well, hearing what y'all are saying, we'll take it out and come back to you with something.
I'll withdraw my motion.
I think that's the best recourse.
So what's your new number there, Phoebe?
$11,620,202.
So
Can we get a motion for the new amount, please?
Move to approve.
A second.
I'll second it.
Okay.
With the understanding, you can come back and ask the nurse or whatever arrangements you want.
I just wanna make sure I'm clear. So, right now, we're removing the 280,000 for the additional nurse. But y'all are gonna go and see, and you might come back and say, we can't do anything different, we're gonna put the 280 right back in it. And we will still have an opportunity to vote on that
That's correct.
final budget. And I'm comfortable with that.
That's correct.
I agree with the mayor that our citizens don't want us giving these folks medical treatment. They don't want them any more comfortable, but I also understand the other side of it is that we gotta give basic and minimum care too, so.
I mean,
that's
our jail was empty, but.
We're right there with you. I mean, I feel the same way y'all do, but I recognize the burden it puts on our staff and the position it puts them in. And I have to think about liability on the county and this minimum level of care that we've got to provide. So I just know what I've seen in a year. We'll come back with something and we'll do the best we can. That's all we can do.
I'm happy to provide names of a few vendors that
Fantastic.
might be
That'd be awesome.
at least worth having a conversation with.
Thank you.
Conversation with Larry Samard.
Ready to vote on the jail correction budget of $11,620,202. Everybody in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Anybody against? Passes 5-0. Now we're on the workhouse litter crew.
Move to approve.
Second.
Let's do it.
Yeah, Sheriff, you got any comments on that?
There is no change to this other than the adjustment to the salary line item.
Mary.
Diane, I would like to note, I've not heard anything from the state of Tennessee regarding our litter grant. for this next fiscal year. So I sent an email, so I'm waiting on that, but
So will you be coming back to make an amendment on this?
this will be the budget we submit. We just haven't received our normal emails from the state of Tennessee regarding the litter grant.
The revenues, that's one of the numbers we're still waiting on, the
The
revenues.
revenue, okay.
All right, is everyone ready to vote on the, workhouse litter crew budget of $247,063? Everybody in favor, say aye. Aye. Anybody against, passes 5-0. And the last one is the. Sheriff, you wanna make any comment?
This is the drug enforcement, budget. And the biggest change in this budget is the lease agreement for 5 years for the building on Beasley that we previously talked about, and that's reflected in this budget. So that's gonna be the primary, and really only significant increase that you'll see in this budget.
Can I get a second? I think Megan did it first. Has anybody got any questions?
Well, I think it's important, since people are watching, this is not a revenue getter.
No.
This is what they capture, and they're spending it. So it's not like it's any money out of taxpayers' pockets.
That's exactly right.
And it's a -0.1%.
So we're gonna vote on the drug enforcement budget of $196,150. Everybody that approves, say aye. Anybody that disapproves, passes 5-0. Is there any other business, except, I think their next budget meeting's tomorrow at 4:30.
Yeah, tomorrow will be, all of the ones highlighted in your,
Everybody should have a packet for tomorrow.
One question, Madam Chair. We, in the law enforcement committee, we addressed the capital budget. So we're not doing that here?
normally what we do, we look at capital at the end of the cycle, see, because
April 2020.
there's a meeting that Phoebe will have a better handle of the revenue cycles and on down the line.
Very, very good. The reason I brought that up is as it's applicable to the Axon project that we talked about in the operating budget. We'll talk about that at a future date. Thank y'all.
Any questions? Motion to adjourn?
Second.
Adjourn.